Welcome back to the CTO Playbook, the podcast dedicated to helping CTOs excel. Could your calmest moment arrive in the middle of a crisis? My guest today, Caroline Elliott, has faced life and death decisions in Avalanche rescue, where every second counts and panic is contagious. Together, we'll explore how the lessons she learned on the mountains can transform how we lead under pressure in the boardroom. From preparation and practice to clarity, communication, and care, we'll discover how to train our mind and our team to perform when it matters most. I'm your host, Adam Horner, coach to CTOs from startups to enterprises, helping you lead with clarity, confidence, and strategic impact. If you've ever felt like you're figuring out leadership in tech the hard way, you're not alone. That's why I created the CTO Playbook, a space for strategic leaders to learn, connect, and grow. Explore coaching, cohorts, and more at thectoplaybook.com. Your path, your pace, your playbook. Let's discover what leadership lessons we can learn from life-saving rescue. Caroline, it's a pleasure to have you on the CTO Playbook. I've been looking forward to this one for a while for multiple reasons that we'll discover as we go through the episode. But just to give everybody a bit of an idea, could you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, who you do it for, and where you've come from with this?
Okay, so great to also meet you, Adam. My path is a pretty unique one. I've come from the mountain rescue area, and I'm bringing all my experience of high pressure environments to the corporate market and helping them kind of fine tune their teams. So when they're actually undergoing extremely high pressure projects, whether that be a deadline, whether it's finishing a project, I will come in and help them using mountain rescue, kind of the rescue mindset to guide them through. So adrenaline is part of my job, and I actually still do work in mountain rescue, though the Avalanche dog, I'll explain later, is no longer. And so that's what I do. I love to fine tune. I love to help people. Obviously, the kind of running kind of area in my life has always been caring for others. So I actually want to help people who are in these environments come through and become a better team, functioning better, communicating better, and also, at the end of the day, what is good is actually feel better within oneself. So we go home from work and we feel good. We don't feel drained. We don't feel kind of disconnected from the work environment we're in. Awesome. So helping corporate teams with high pressure environments, crisis management, all from the background of mountain rescue. Now, for a lot of my listeners, they're probably thinking, mountain rescue? What? Could you do us a favor, Caroline? Could you just explain a little bit about what mountain rescue is, what it encompasses, and what the job involves? Yes, so I trained as a piste secouriste. Obviously, that's a French word, which means ski patrol. But it's not really ski patrol, it's the ski mountain rescue. Right. But I'd say the rescue mindset is really coming from the speciality which I took on in 2010. And that was joining the kind of, say, elite mountain rescue unit in France to become a dog handler. So a dog handler which can detect people, human scent, live human scent. And we go into anything from rubble, as in building collapse, gas explosions, from air scenting to large area searches. But I'd say the most pressurized part of that work, we work in avalanches. So we've got a very, very minimal time to pull people out with a high level of survival. We call it the 15-minute kind of window, and you're under extreme amounts of pressure. And also at the same time, that extreme amounts of pressure, if you don't react correctly, your partner, which is your furry partner, the dog. The dog, yeah. He's not going to react in the way that he needs to react. So it's all about looking after what you're doing with a mindset that it can affect your other partner, your 50-50 in the team. Wow, so teamwork, collaboration, timeliness, it's critical because lives are at stake. Exactly. And I guess there's often an element of getting from wherever you are when you get the warning to the site where the avalanche has come down or where the building rubble is, and then going through a predictable, reliable process to find people still breathing, hopefully. I mean, yeah, for sure. Avalanche is a very tricky one because you can actually not be in a ski resort as such, where the avalanche occurs. So you'll be taking off from an area which is potentially like 15 minutes from a ski area, from the town. Wow. You'll be in the helicopter and you'll be counting the minutes because, as we're trained in that kind of area, that we have minimal time to get people out. And I say it's very tricky at that point because I'm trying to remain calm and not give off my vibes to my dog that I'm stressed. And Luckily, I did have a dog who was pretty chilled out. I mean, he used to lie and fall asleep in the helicopter, which was always kind of alarming to my colleagues going, is he actually going to get up and work? And I'd be, yeah, no, it's fine. It's just me who's the worried one here. So, yeah, no, ironically, yeah, it's, I say for me, it's my normality. Working in these high pressure environments. And as a result, it's become second nature to me, the muscle memory and the gestures we need.
And that practice and training is absolutely essential. Just give us an idea, Caroline, how many times per season would you typically be going out with the dog after an avalanche to go and find people?
Actually, to be honest, it's actually quite, I say rare. If you're comparing accidents on the slopes, as in the marked slopes we have in resorts now, we're having a lot more accidents. But I mean, for example, a call out for avalanche could probably be a couple, like 3-4 times in a season.
Right, okay.
Depending on what type of season it is. But having said that, you know you're on a time limit. You know you've got to actually perform. You know you've got to actually come back and recover people, which a lot of the time have put themselves at risk because they haven't respected the information. They haven't respected all the signs which have been given to them, and they've gone off. And you find yourself in a situation where, I'm going to have to put myself at risk and my dog at risk to rescue someone. But as we all know, with the rescue emergency services, you have no chance at that point to take your own personal beliefs and your values in that sense into, you just have to go and help. But they are quite rare avalanches. We are actually having more now potentially because of things are not freezing as well as they did in the past. Recently we had, I mean, obviously you probably heard of them in Nepal. We had a big avalanche. There was a big avalanche also in Italy. And again, a lot of these will occur once a big weather front's come through. It's dumped a lot of snow and it becomes beautiful out there and people go, it's going to be okay. But pre-winter, there's a lot of potential accidents going to occur. So round about now.
When the slopes are least stable, basically.
Yeah, even the slopes of the kind of backcountry is least stable. As in ski patrol, my piste secouriste, we have to make everything safe. In the mornings we're bombing. We're controlled bombing, obviously, as I said, not terrorist types.
Yeah.
So we're bombing. So to ensure that the resort is safe, so anything which can come down on a marked slope is not going to come down. So it's all about risk evaluation and risk management. But as I say, the avalanches, they are rare and they are quite recently, they've been quite sad because there's a lot of people who are doing stuff which probably 10, 15 years ago they weren't doing due to the equipment advances, due to technology. And they're taking stuff forward which they shouldn't be doing.
Right. So being sensible and being safe, sort of often seen as two different extremes, but done well, people can go and do fun things that are safe, but also in areas where there is risk.
Yeah,
but by minimizing those risks. But we have to remain thankful for people like you who are willing to jump into danger to help those people who haven't followed the rules or by accident end up in scenarios where an unpredictable event happens and an avalanche goes where it wasn't expected to happen. I've seen that myself as well.
Yeah,
We'll get into that in a moment because I grew up in the mountains too, and I've been in a couple of avalanches myself. And they're not fun when you're on the wrong side of the avalanche, when you're underneath it. But training and practice is a key thing, and that's one of those things that I think that's effectively what you bring into the corporate world, isn't it? Is let's practice the things that we need to do. But before we get to that though, Caroline, can you just tell us a bit about what it was that got you into snow and mountains and working in, let's face it, a relatively niche job? Yeah,
no, for sure. And I probably chose the wrong job because I should have become a ski instructor. It's a lot better paid. But anyway, that's it. I can't go back. Ironically, I was a gymnast at a very young age, just like training 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then by complete, not mistake, but chance, my mum said, I'm going to take you on a ski holiday to Maribel. So I ended up going to a ski holiday in Maribel. And I managed up spetching the dummy one day as I missed the last lift and had to walk up my ski bit. So I wasn't very happy. But having said that, I actually took to skiing like, a duck to water because obviously the balance was there.
Right.
And after that, it just didn't stop. My happy place was the mountains. And luckily my parents had enough kind of wealth to take me on regular ski holidays. And then it progressed from there to ski ballet. Very
right,
80s. Okay. Great discipline, which is no longer a discipline.
That was an Olympic sport at one point, wasn't it?
I know. I don't think it was Olympic. It was kind of more like a demonstration
Olympic test sport, I think, for one of the Olympics. Yeah. Okay,
and then
cool.
I kind of got into ski jumping, which aerials, which again I love ski ballet, but aerials was a bit too high. So kind of going off a jump, even my coach said, so Caroline, what are you seeing? And I was like, nothing. He's like, open your eyes. So I realised at that point, no, that's not going to happen. And then, what happened after that? That was what happened. I actually went to a resort to do some training with some Germans when I was in Bavaria. I was studying German in Bavaria, in Munich. And I had a really bad accident. I ended up shattering my lower leg, my tibia. And I ended up with a spiral fracture. I was helicoptered out.
Oh, goodness.
By an incredible team who dosed me up with morphine. So I was smiley, got to the hospital, ended up having surgery and ended up having compartment syndrome. So I nearly lost my leg.
Wow.
So I think that's when everything I thought, wow, I was rescued by this incredible team. An incredible team in the hospital rescued me as such because I could have lost my leg. I spent 3 weeks there, went to Munich. Physio rescued me in the sense that 6 months of physio. Got into lots of German nightclubs for free, which is great. They're like, Sie wollen tanzen. And I was on my crutches and my pink plaster up to my hip. I was like, ja, natürlich. And so it was a massive adventure for me. And I ended up ski instructing after that in my weeks off. And then I kind of didn't do anything for about 10 years. And then I decided I wanted to go back into ski patrol. And I could talk for hours about this, but I decided to go and I trained in Australia.
Okay.
And down
on
in
the side of the world.
Threadbow. And I came back to France, wanted to be ski patroller, and I showed the French my ski patrol qualifications with the big kangaroo on them, and they were like, me not. So that was not going to go anywhere. So I had to start from A to Z from the ski test, and I took the challenge on, give me the gauntlet, I did it. So
wow.
I went into it, and it was pretty hardcore, and I say maybe more hardcore for jumping through the hoops as opposed to the physical kind of aspect, because I was a good skier and I learned quickly and, I spoke French. So it was just the kind of, jumping through the hoops and being British and female.
Okay, because that probably put you in a very, very small minority, maybe of one there in that scenario.
Yeah, minority. And it was just like, what is she doing? And there are mountains in England. Can she ski? So it was kind of like jumping kind of over these kind of barriers put in front of me. But hey, I do love a challenge. So I came out of the Alpine School in Chamonix with my second level in 2011. And then I, after that, very promptly went into my bombing qualification in Alpe d'Huez. 10 days of learning to bomb in a quarry, which is great fun.
Right, okay.
Not. And then the snow side's fine, but bombing in a quarry is not my thing. And then the pièce de la résistance, as we say, was the dog handling.
Yeah.
I did my 2-week course with Fjord, my flat-coated retriever. And incredible dog. Incredible.
And how long were you and Fjord working the mountains then?
We did about 8. He was 9 when he passed.
Wow.
So passed. He died suddenly just before COVID. But he was like 2 years old when we went to training. The dog has to be a minimum of 1 and also less than 4 years old in France to pass the qualification. And up until last year, you had to be male. No females were allowed.
As a dog, wow, okay. Very tight criteria.
So yes, it was, So that's the kind of my path I took. And now I've decided to I'm going back to do a full season this year. I think it's going to be my last season.
Right.
Because I'm really, really enjoying now going into the corporate world, speaking keynotes. And I'm also at the point of doing creating an avalanche simulation camp, which will mean bringing corporate and groups of people into the mountain environment, putting them under high pressure, hiding them in holes, as in avalanche holes. With the dog's toy and making them go through a bit of pain, and they'll come out, let's say a better person, but it's a funny experience. I love it. I mean, everyone's happy place. I love things like this. And I think bringing people out of their comfort zone and taking them out of an office environment can really, really help. And it can re-energize people. I mean, mountains, as you know, they re-energize anyone. Well, they should
They definitely do for me, that's
if
for sure.
If they don't, then something wrong with you. No, I'm kidding. That's... That's kind of my
That's incredible. There are so many moments of sheer grit and resilience in your background. It's almost not surprising that you've taken the difficult path at various points in your career and journey so far, because none of those things are easy. None of those things, there were obvious clear sort of role models to follow, you were pretty much setting the trend for quite a lot of that time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we're only probably, I don't think even 10% women in France. North America, there's a lot more women. And it's still not easy.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, if you feel that you need to do something, you do it. But yeah, as I say, there, you know, it's my normality.
Yeah, and that commitment to giving back, to helping people, for me, that's the thing. That's the element that stands out as the driver that actually takes you through that. So given all of that then, let's bring it back to those people who are listening, who are probably either, you know, traveling to their work or at their work while they're listening to this. So what are the elements of the, you know, snow survival, avalanche survival, crisis survival that you bring from the mountainside into the office?
Okay, so what we do is what I take from my mind, so my rescue mindset is what I'd say predominantly we do with our dog handling training camps.
Okay.
We have to do 6 dog training handling camps every year to be, well, 5, we have to pass 5 to be operational. And before, when you actually go to do these tests, if you're not prepared, you're going to end up in a tricky situation. So preparation is key. Is you have to be prepared. So, for example, my avalanche bag, I need to be able to pull that out and actually go into the pocket and go, I know exactly where, for example, my probe is or my shovel is, which is obviously it, but other elements there, I actually need to know where everything is. And so my muscle memory, as I grab that pocket, I pull it out. It's prepared for equipment side of things. I say with the avalanche transceivers, we have to be prepared. And the next one on to that is training. So you've got something which is new, you've prepared it, but having said that, you need to train it, you need to build your muscle memory up. So it's all very fine and well saying, here's the software. They're going, we've done your training course, go and use it. It's just like, oh, right. Some people consolidate a lot less quickly than others, and I'm one of those.
Right.
I actually take a lot while. I don't know why, but I've always had this aerobics classes. Just forget it. I'm just like not good at them. So coordination, there's some people who do consolidate less rapidly than others. So by repeating actions, it can be 10 times, it can be 15 times. We say up to 200, 300 times to actually get that muscle memory going.
And the muscle memory is particularly important, is it? Because when I lived in the mountains, as I said, I've had a couple of scenarios where I've been through a number of crises. And one of the things that a lot of people read about in a book but don't really understand until it happens to them is that the physiology of being stressed, of being in a crisis, means that if you practice something not enough, the muscle memory can be sort of overridden by panic, by fear, by guilt, by all these other emotions, and just by going blank as well. You know, the body's safety mechanism is effectively to shut down. And without the practice, you can't sort of overcome or override that sort of the body's natural defenses and natural reactions to stress, panic, and fear. And I find that I used to do a lot of martial arts, and so there was an expression that Muhammad Ali had. He said, "You can have the greatest plan." Oh no, it wasn't Muhammad Ali. It was Tyson. He said, "You can have the greatest plan, but it goes out the window the second you get punched in the face." And kind of, you know, crisis and panic does that to you, and therefore, without the muscle memory, you're literally not going to be able to carry on and continue.
Oh, for sure. And I've seen it in many cases. Either I have deal with people who are frozen, or they get very, very reactive. As in, there can be anger, there can be
defensive.
Yeah. Which again is a completely normal reptilian reaction to what's going on. And it's knowing how to deal with those people and deal with the situation at the same time. But as I say, if you're not prepared and you haven't practiced and you haven't repeated what you need to repeat, it's only normal. And there's no one who can turn around in for example, in management or my team manager or turn around and say, well, you haven't got it. It's just like, well, no, because you haven't given me the chance to get to know what I'm meant to get to know. Same with the avalanche transceivers, they all work differently. And if people expect to wear them, you know, I say people just going out for a week, and if they don't know how to, they can wear them, turn them on. That's wonderful. But when you have to then use them to find your father or your friend or your mother or your child, you know, God forbid, you need to know how to react with that. And a lot of people take that for granted. They just think, oh, it'll work. And I know a scenario where someone said that it worked and he didn't know how to work it. So yeah, it's about say, really, really kind of making these kind of gestures, these actions deep down within your psyche, so you know how to react.
And that basically comes down to repetition, doesn't it?
Yeah. I say repetition. I say repeating, practicing. I say, give me software or give me something to do, techie. I am with my beacon, that's fine. But if you give me something really complex, it will take me probably longer than the average person to consolidate. But having said that, I have strengths in other areas. So, and I think at the end of the day, that's in a team, that's what I found. If there is someone who's taking longer to get to know something or learn something, that manager needs to be kind to that person and say, okay, it's not about being an average or you're below average. It's about you have more difficulty achieving that quicker than someone else, but we'll work on it because it's about learning the positives, the positives in the team and bringing that strength forward.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes down to how people work together, isn't it? Because I think often we have this idea, okay, this is how I react when I'm stressed or when I'm under pressure. And we get to know that over time to a certain level, because I think most people in the majority of their lives operate with a sort of a peak level of stress that's well below sort of crisis levels, and certainly normally well below, life or death levels. And there are different ways in which we react. And understanding how we react is one thing, but then understanding how the people around us are likely to react, and how we work with them when they're in that state of reaction is another thing, isn't it?
Completely. As I say, again, I've seen it with team members. It's understanding and making kind of, I don't know if it's like making kind of time for that or just learning. So you do, as I say, you function in that high pressure environment, even though you're not used to that person reacting in that same way. We're all individuals, we all react differently. And if we give time and effort for that, the team there will be more cohesion in a team, as opposed to people kind of like fighting and trying to find their place. So it's about molding to become one at the end of the day. And especially like with Avalanche Rescue, if you don't do that, you're going to end up in difficulty because you have to work as a team, from the dog handlers to the people probing to the doctor who's waiting to the people who are looking on. It's an interesting domain.
It is, isn't it? And a lot of that comes down to how we communicate with each other, how we speak to each other, because obviously there's the way that we speak to each other normally, that, whether we're, down at the pub after work drinks or something, then versus how we communicate in the office. But then when we're under pressure, when the crisis hits, that communication changes again, I find, and people tend to go, in my experience, people tend to go into a single mode of communication when they're under pressure. Yeah. For me, it's focused and direct and fairly curt, sometimes even blunt. Whereas at other times I might be more, more coach mode, more explanatory, more accommodating. When the pressure's on, I'm quite focused. Other people react in different ways. And I think learning how we communicate is one thing. We all practice communication all the time, especially teamwork, leadership work. But then practicing communication under pressure, I think is something else. And I think when you're working with rescue and working with the dogs, there's a lot more than just verbal communication.
Yeah, I mean, verbal, I think the stats are 7% of communication, the actual words we say. It's the situation or body language. And then the dog has another element on top. It's the olfactic, so the nose. So he will be smelling other things going on an avalanche. That's all he's using. His major sense, would say, the sense which takes over for him is his nose, because he's looking for someone with his nose. He obviously will use his eyes, but it's a nose which will guide him. And if I'm stressed, I will be giving off chemicals he will go, oh, she's stressed, so why is she stressed? And then he potentially will not panic, but he will react differently. He won't be relaxed. So also, yes, you do have to be, I'd say, brief with your communication word-wise when you're working in an emergency situation, but also have the tone which is not too harsh, because, again, you're dealing with people potentially who are not going to be part of your team, the people from the outside, and you start shouting at people who are already stressed, who've seen an avalanche. It's not going to help the situation. So you've got to have a multifaceted kind of communication going on. And with the dogs, as I say, it is unique, extremely unique. So they will pick up on a lot of smells. That's another thing with the avalanches. They say not to smoke, not that you're going to bring out your packet of cigarettes and have have a drag on your cigarette. They say no to urinating, not that you're going to go for a wee on an avalanche. So just any kind of outside odours which can put a dog off their work. But canine communication it's another world. And I find that fascinating because I still have a dog, but it's not a dog. My dog does actually bed bug detection. I've taken a break from avalanches, and she is incredible. Her communication. I'm not just talking about when she looks for bed bugs. So yeah, we could have learned a lot from our canine friends, so to speak. And if you can bring a dog into your office place, great place to reduce stress, tension. So yeah, communication is key. And also I'd say the area clarity. So communication is about, passing a message, but if you're not clear on what you want, or what you need or what needs to be done, then that's not going to be done as a result of, communication, which is not clear.
Or it'll be inefficient when time is of the essence.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in terms of techniques or approaches then, are there any things that you've picked up and discovered over your years of working in these high pressure scenarios that help maintain the clarity or the focus on what it is that you need to get done and how you get that across to others simply, succinctly?
There's one thing that I do generally do, but that can be avalanche, just rescue on a slope. Once I arrive to an area, I will literally take 2 seconds, 3 seconds to take the whole picture in. And it's the same if you get a project given to you. It's overwhelming. Avalanche rescue is overwhelming. A massive collision on a slopes is really overwhelming when you've just got people kind of screaming and avalanche, and you've got like 3 people under, you got to, So I always take a step back and I set myself up. It might be a couple of seconds and people go, well, that's wasted a couple of seconds. Well, it's not, because if I'm not clear in where I'm going, I can't guide my dog, because the dog will also, we set our dogs up we will sit them down generally, or some people go from them standing, and we will then go, shash. So the word is, you breathe in with your nose and you send the word off. So that's it can be even defined as a reset. So it's the same with if something in an environment where you're at work and you can't get your head around it. I always say, take a step away, walk out, take a little walk, get some fresh air, 5 minutes, reset, then go back in. And then you can actually look at things from a different view. And if you don't have that reset kind of environment, you can end up not being productive in what you're doing.
That's amazing, because I often find that people talk about, they use these wording and languages like, we stumbled into a problem, we walked into this scenario, this challenge, and it kind of gives you already that the wording of it, the expression of it tells you that there wasn't that moment of sort of stop, reset, reframe, figure out where we are, and then orient on where we want to go. And I think so. Your point about stopping or just stepping back from it for a moment before coming in and taking a fresh look to reorient. I think that's a really, really good tip for how you can get a perspective that's fixed, simple, and just what you need for this particular moment. And
then with that, you can also adapt. So you come in to a scenario where you're given all the information. We get information given on our beepers. We get them over our radio on the hill. And same with the fire brigade. So I also work with the fire brigade. You'll get a notice at the beginning before you leave in the ambulance. And it's like you build this kind of picture up in your head. And it can actually be completely the wrong picture of what's going to occur. Generally, the things which are serious come over as not serious, apart from if it's obviously an avalanche. We know immediately there's going to be an issue. But call outs, we say collision, and it might be nothing. So yeah, that's why another reason is when you get given this information, you process it, but you need to also go in with a clear, open mind to what potentially could be there, to then make the right kind of decisions, to then do the right kind of gestures to help the people involved.
And that's a really good point. I mean, I remember because when the serious avalanche that I was in, when I was a teenager, we were already on the mountain and we could see the situation developing. We could see that we had a lot more experience, training, and knowledge just by their actions of what they were doing. So we were able to sort of say, okay, let's abandon our original plans and let's set up for if it turned out to be when that situation goes wrong. And then, so we started changing where we were going. We moved to a different part of the mountain to avoid a slip slope that we could see that was likely to develop around where they were crossing a steep slope that looked to our guides unstable. And we moved further down to make sure that we were out of the way if the slip started going. And secondly, that we were in a better position so that we could help if it slid. And inevitably it did slide. Otherwise, we wouldn't be telling the story. And those people who were on that steep, dangerous part of the slope got caught up in it. Thankfully, the way it started, it was really only that they were sort of all in a line, and it was just the middle section of people that got swept in the first part of the going into snow. And a couple of those were still visibly above the snow when the snow stopped. And so a couple of people went and found those two. The rest of us, there was a variety of people in our group. We're all teenagers, quite young, 4 adults with us. And several of us had been trained in the transponders. So we immediately put transponders on and started figuring it out. And we very quickly realized there's no signal. These folks don't even have transponders on. And that's where we just went to. We had ski poles. We didn't have the probes that are long and deep. So we used that, and then we just used the zigzag pattern that we'd learned. So fairly basic approach. And, teenagers, so not sort of strong, not resilient, not practice in stressful scenarios, all those kinds of things. And then it felt like a long time. It was probably only about 15 minutes. A helicopter flew in and some mountain rescue team came in. And yeah, there was a couple of kids who didn't make it out of it. It was another school group, as it turns out, that had come out from the UK, had gone with their teachers, no formal guides. There were so many ways in which it was set up not to be a success. And unfortunately, they'd picked to cross a slope that was a known risk slope, and it was snowing heavily, and the wind was blowing onto that slope. But then, so you probably look at that and you think, oh my goodness me, there's so many things that were obviously going wrong there. But the bit because obviously we'll talk about what happens afterwards, because I'm sure that's something we'll come into in a moment. But afterwards, the folks were talking to us about what had happened and our experiences and so on, because we got interviewed by those helicopter responders as well as the police in the end. But they were talking about what we had done, and then and they also asked about how we were sort of feeling and what our reactions were to it. Because, as I say, there were 2 kids who didn't come out of it. And the good news was that the vast majority of people did come out. They were fine, obviously very shaken by the whole thing, and they all went straight back to the UK afterwards. We didn't get to actually meet any of them. But what was reinforced to us was that the 5 of us who had the formal training did what we should have done and did the best that we could have done in the scenario. And I think that's something that when I look at teams these days, when crises hits, that's the bit that's often missed. It's like, you guys, you did these things. Those are the right things. Couple of learnings we could have done, but well done for doing the right things right.
Exactly.
I find that doesn't happen as often as it really should do.
Yeah, we're very focused now on, in fact, I saw that from my team. I wasn't in I was in a dog team, as say, with the fire and rescue, specialised mountain rescue unit, and my boss was a pretty toxic person, so there was actually not many positives I was ever given. It was always like negatives, and I was never, oh, you did you that really well, Caroline. It was always, it's kind of like, oh, you've got a good dog. And it's like, yeah, okay, but the dog, obviously, I have an effect on my dog. So I've actually had, the other side of things where there haven't been positive reinforcement. And luckily, due to my resilience and my strength, the character, I pulled myself through it. But I actually realised now, looking back, how dysfunctional that was, and how I probably could have performed even better if I'd had someone positively reinforcing, gestures I'd done. But that is we do in the mountain rescues. You come back from a call out, something like that, and we'll go, that was the negatives, what we can do better. But there's not enough emphasis on what the positives were, which is positives will breed more positives, and it will bring a team together. We all make mistakes and we all do things wrong, but focusing on them all the time, it's good to kind of evaluate them, but then we also need to go back and say, well, that was brilliant. You did that really well. And maybe going forward, we could, you could, focus on this area. And I, for example, I'm a linguist. So in the team, when I was actually sent off with the military unit in France, a dog handling team, which is another thing, I ended up being the Spanish translator. I was the only female on the trip. Slept 3 hours a night. That was it for 3 days. Wow. We got flown to Spain from France. We got walking like at 20 kilometers a night. And I ended up becoming their translator. So my strength was their translator, English, Spanish. And again, I got back from my mission of 3 days of virtually no sleep, which is incredibly character building. And I didn't get anything like, oh, you did really well, Caroline. We even got simulated hijacked by the French Foreign Legion. And like at 3:00 in the morning with like rifles going off and everything. And cut long story short, get back. And it was like, oh, you did really well, Caroline, for holding out. And it's like, no. So positive reinforcement. And also going back to the avalanche scenario, you have to take care of people kind of after, but on the kind of avalanche behavior, I mean, how long ago was that avalanche you're talking about?
Oh, this was, about 30 years ago now.
Okay. 30 years ago, last January in Val d'Isère, not similar situation in the sense that it was a high risk. It was 4 over 5, 5 being the highest risk of avalanches.
Right.
A load of people went off to an area which was actually, I think it was shut due to patrol. It was very high risk. Yeah. So immediately high risk, what do? You don't do off-piste skiing because you've been advised not to, and avalanche goes off. Cut long story short, a couple were caught. Again, none of them had these transceivers on at all. And the dogs came in and they had to find their bodies.
It's always a sad story, isn't it? Because you just think with one sort of $30 piece of equipment, the outcome could be so much different.
The transceiver does cost about €200. Okay. The ones now. But then at the end of the day, you've given all this information by the area you're in is like going danger, 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 danger. And what do? You go the opposite. It's just like, if someone said, oh, don't jump on that train, rail, would you go and jump on it? No. Okay. It's not so much pleasure as powder skiing, but it's kind of like risk management. We take risks in patrol to make that area safe. And then you go against our advice. And then the people, as I say, come back to how people feel after an avalanche, whether people who view the avalanche or people go and rescue. I've been to ones which have been successful pullouts, pulled out a whole family, and you're watching the parents, watch on the avalanche where you've got the child's been under over 2 hours, which, statistically, there's a very high chance she's not going to come out. And she did. The little one, she was 4 years old, she came out. So the statistics as a professional, what is likely to happen, but there are exceptions. But then you come back and sometimes you do feel the brunt of it. If you don't, I was meant to attend one avalanche. I couldn't go for a reason. I was injured. And to this day, I should have been there. And to this day, I think, if I'd been there, would I have found the guy? Would he have come out? But then his father should never have taken him in an off-piste area when it was a very high risk, and the child passed.
Yeah.
He had a GoPro on his head, the lovely GoPros, be a hero. But in that case, he wasn't much of a hero, bless him, because he didn't have a transceiver on, so he didn't come out. So, it's about, after all the kind of, these stories about fatalities, it's about looking after the team. So even if it's like for yourself, that will stay with you for your life, looking onto the avalanche. I imagine you still have images. I still have images of quite harsh rescues I've attended. But
you had to ask me how many years ago. I can still remember it vividly, and to think just how long ago it was, and I was kind of surprised myself at just how long ago that was.
It will do, and it will stay there, but it's about processing it. And as I say, it's about team safety, the psychological safety. We don't put enough emphasis on it. It's all about performance now and reaching that deadline and doing that. And why are people suffering from burnout now? Because they're not being nurtured or actually seen as a real human being. They're just a unit or a person, like I was in that team.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of the expression human resources. Right? I'd much rather call it people.
That's a good point.
Being in charge of people.
Never thought of it like that before. Yeah. So ironically, as I say, coming from a rescue profession where the rescue colleagues should, in theory, be these great, open-minded, lovely kind of, oh, Caroline, how you feeling? Kind of nah. But, having said that, whether it's cultural, I don't know, because in North America, I know for a fact that they do, for patrol, they have a special check-in kind of protocol. So when you've been through a bad situation and, they'll actually check in, your colleagues will check in on you. So.
And this applies to, crises in the office, handling outages, whatever the challenge is. I think when we get to the end of those things, too often it's kind of, okay, emergency over, let's carry on as usual.
No.
Whereas, when it's been very hard, it does pay to just take a couple of hours to go, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Do you need an hour or two, a day off? Do you need something to help with that? Because we all need to process those kind of things.
Of course we do.
Because the last thing we want is for them to replay themselves over in our minds again and again and again. And that is shown to be reduced by taking time immediately afterwards to just be able to process it, just to be with it and to come through that moment and be able to talk to people mentors, people who are trained to help with stress, and coaches as well. And I think that moment of just reflection as an individual, but also having somebody else to chat to, even if it's just, other people on the team saying, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you okay? I think it can make all the difference to how we process post-crisis environments.
For sure. I mean, in an office environment, again, it's all about time. But if you're not looking after your team will start deteriorating and it won't be as effective. And, we're in Mental Health Awareness Month for men at the moment. And really, it is still much a label on men that they're not allowed to express their emotions, even though we have made huge steps forward. It is still in that environment where, yes, I'm fine. It's like, okay, you can take that reaction, but at the end of the day, it's going to probably be better for you in the long run, even if it's someone not in the office. But I think leadership, kind of the leaders or the management should, in my opinion, take that role of checking in on people. And they're not showing a weakness, they're just showing that they're a human being. And some of the big successful companies, around the world, they even have areas where you can go and take a siesta, or you can go, and I think that's great. If you look after your staff, they'll stay with you. And it's as much, I think money is one area we can be motivated by it. But I think if I was to be taken on by a company who looked after me and let me have a siesta, for example, I would be on board for life. I just think, yeah, we become stronger as a unit. And if we're not making the kind of little kind of tweaks in that unit, then yeah, there's someone going to suffer there.
Yeah, and I think the economics of it do actually, even if you just look at it purely economically, it does actually pay off to do these kinds of things.
It's like, sure.
do I pay an hour or two, a day or two, soon after the crisis, soon after the difficult, stressful, pressured scenario? Or do I pay it in terms of lost hours for weeks, months, years, continuing on after that? Or, as you say, a lost employee who could have remained valuable and contributing to the organization for a longer time than they did because of how they weren't just asked how they're doing at the end of something tough.
Yeah, again, a lot of, I don't want to say this, but there is a lot of ego also involved in companies. And I've seen recently a friend of mine, it's quite a sad story, but she's now signed off and she's going to be fighting breast cancer. And I think the environment she was in, the toxic environment she was in, and she was one of the lead people in the ski resort in the Alps. I think the toxic environment hasn't obviously helped her immune system. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I think the more you create an environment which is not healthy for your employees, in the long run, there's going to be issues and things will come out. And it doesn't take much, to see someone smiling and happy. It's so much, more fun working with someone like that than someone who's, not
Indeed.
happy or not well.
Well, I mean, your background is incredibly fascinating and very interesting, and I think very, very applicable to those people who are handling stressful situations, because we always have them in the office, in engineering, in software, in technology. But what I'd love to do is be able to try and distill this incredible knowledge of yours down into a playbook, as we do traditionally on the CTO playbook. And I think I've sort of picked out 5 points that I'd like you to just help me go through and just check that I've understood them correctly, and that you can sort of tell us succinctly how we'd apply them. So step 1 I picked out was preparation. Be prepared. So the Boy Scouts approach to things. Yeah,
for sure. Preparation. And just on that note, I'll give you a little example quickly. For example, our transceivers. And there's been quite a few issues with a few brands of transceivers, models more than brands. And again, it just shows that tech can fail. In fact, we had one whereby a brand, and it's through the batteries, which due to sweat, because you wear them actually underneath your
jacket. Close to the body,
yeah, the sweat had come in and they'd stop, make it, the transceiver didn't work any longer. So tech does fail. And that's where we obviously got dogs and probes. So preparation is actually even looking at these, your equipment you're using, you're taking your batteries out, wiping them, putting them back in on if you're doing ski touring, for example, you're building up more transpiration. That's French English. So yeah, preparation, definitely.
Yeah, and I think the more preparation you do in general, the better you're going to be ready for scenarios when they happen. And that then comes down to practice and repetition was the next thing we spoke about,
practice.
Number 2 on your list.
You can't practice enough. And I say it's either from a technical point of view or I say from muscle movement. If you are a skier, you're going to go, you want to do off-piste, backcountry. practice your transceiver searches, because otherwise, if it does go, things do go wrong, you know what to do and you know how to react. Even ski patrol, we have to practice regularly. So yeah, we should say practice makes perfect, but perfection isn't something we should go for nowadays. It's doing our stuff and getting our stuff out there. That's what's important, but practice, repetition.
Practice gives us preparation. Good. And one of the things that I've seen there, one of the large organizations in tech started off was this concept of the Chaos Monkey team in Amazon for the AWS services. Initially, what they did, the goal of that team was to go around and basically cause chaos. They would pull cables out, disconnect power, and they would basically, in some cases, simulate a crisis, and in some cases, it would actually cause one. There are stories of them discovering that stuff didn't work by causing actual, genuine outages, like all of the AWS and the Eastern Availability Zone, which is pretty much about, I think, 30% of AWS's entire capacity, because they pulled the power plug out. And of course, their approach is that everything should be resilient. And turns out some things weren't. They found a single point of failure by unplugging this thing, which had a cascade effect. But and that's one way to practice that is to cause those moments. But again, it comes back to practice and repetition. So number 3 on the list then we had was maintaining clarity and focus. Yep.
So clarity, you've got to, the message has to be clear, what you're saying or what you're doing. If it's not clear, for example, if you've got a project in front of you and you're not clear on what, I think also why you're doing something. If you're not clear on why, I personally would question, well, how am I going to sit there and work on this if I don't know what the outcome is? I think it's what the outcome is, why we're doing it. Going back to very basic school, sometimes, you're given things to do and you had no idea why. It's just like, well, no. Clarity in our message rescue, we have to be clear what we're going to do, what we're going for, and how we're going to go about making a successful operation.
Absolutely. And I think as leaders, we need to get clear ourselves and have a succinct thing. And then the next thing, step 4, is communication.
Yeah, exactly. As I was saying before about communication, we talk about communication as like, you can talk as much as you want, but if the other person next to you is actually not switched onto your communication and your way you communicate, then the message is not going to pass. As I say, that's why I say we're working with a dog, actually learn to communicate probably better, because I know the subtle signs my dog's going to pick up on. Whereas sometimes the subtle signs from a human being, even though we are more complex than dogs in some ways, no, I'm kidding, you don't get that. So I say communication is not just about speaking, it's about passing that message in a way that it will get the end result. And that can be from intonation to what you're saying to
body
situation.
Language.
Yeah, body language is a massive one, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because I love the expression you had earlier on about sort of the stress being almost infectious, if you like. And I've seen that especially true in teams where I've a stressful leader who's showing and having visible stress it's like a cascade where it sort of ripples out from them to other people. Whereas that leader who stays, calm under the pressure and is sort of the rock of the team, the rest of the team begins to take on the same attributes just because they're basically mimicking that leader. It's completely non-verbal, but it's amazing the difference when you can observe it from half outside the team.
Yeah. So again, that's exactly what happens with the dog. If I'm not calm, the dog will pick up. So people say, why are you comparing it to a dog? It's just like, well, that's what dogs don't speak. So you have to use your other, wait a minute, is it 92, 93% of your,
communication ability. So, yeah. And then step 5, which we spent quite a bit of time talking about it, which is what happens afterwards. How are we doing? Are we checking in with people? How does our debrief go?
Debrief for me is as important as the mission involved, because if you come down and you've got to evaluate what could have been, not what went wrong, what could have been done better. But then if there's not a kind of well done to you all and everyone feels like a valued member, then things will not move forward in the future, and you won't be, I don't see teams functioning in a healthy way and a productive way if this is not done in a kind, effective way. I say we all have issues where we could work on, but it's good not to really focus on them all the time.
Yeah.
And it's also good to have a buddy, whether that be a colleague, someone to check in on you, because some people are very good at fronting and saying, no, everything is fine. And you will see them in a week's time and they're not saying anything, or they all go off work for a week. So yeah, checking in psychological safety is for me the number one.
And I can imagine, having seen so little of it, the emphasis on it needs to be that much more. And I think the same is true in engineering. We're very good at going, right, done that, check it off the list, because we're very logical people, engineers, straight on to the next thing because it's the next on the list. Whereas I worked with one team where there was a product manager. And so retrospective is a fairly common meeting that you have in software engineering cycles. And the retrospective meeting is pretty much that. It's a debrief. It's a look back. And this particular product manager, every retrospective, he would stop people at the beginning of the meeting and say, right, just before we go anything in, before we put anything on the whiteboard, I just want to have a round of applause for this job done. And for me, that was one of those moments where it cut the sequence from, one step to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and just created that momentary break and everybody looking around the room. And it's something that I've carried on since then, because it's something that it has such a deliberate respect moment in the process that it sort of changed my way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's positive, isn't it? It's great. Some people find it, say, oh, that's a bit cheesy. It's just like, well, no, it's not. The vibes we can send by being positive is,
not to be underestimated, I think.
So yeah, for sure.
Caroline, it's been wonderful to learn about your experience and how we can take it from the mountainside to the boardroom. If people want to learn more, get in touch with you, how can they find you? Okay,
so I'm on LinkedIn. If you look for me on LinkedIn, Caroline Elliott.
We'll put the link in the session notes.
And also website caralinelliott.me. And I do have an Instagram. And there's also another element I'd just like to bring up. So I do, the keynote speaking is for me I'd say my kind of focus now. I thoroughly enjoy it, and also bring a bit of French humour in and other areas. So it's a delight for me to do it. But I do have a little baby, as I explained to you before, my book. So I just literally bring it up. I'll bring it up. So this is the Swedish version.
Right. Oh, look at that.
And then, so I've written a book. It's my Avalanche dog. And it's to keep children safe on the mountains. So my ongoing thing is I love to keep people safe, whether it is in the kind of boardroom or office or wherever they are. So I'm trying to start for the young ones too. So yeah.
Well, I've had a look through it. It's a beautiful book. It's beautifully illustrated and a great story.
Yeah. No, brilliant. It's been great chatting, and it's actually lovely to actually chat to someone who's also experienced, unfortunately, I say that, an avalanche. So it's good to speak to you.
There's so many great parallels. Caroline, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate your time. So just before you go, I'd like to ask you for a favour in return for putting together this episode of the CTO Playbook for you. Please share the episode with just one person who will appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or another platform, sharing the episode will help more CTOs find the podcast and enable me to create more great content. Remember that you can find more information on the CTOplaybook.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the CTO Playbook.